And now, it is my great honor to introduce to you our keynote speaker, a champion for social and racial justice, a respected political and cultural organizer, and a fierce advocate for reproductive freedom. Our leader, President and CEO of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Alexis McGill Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gibson. I need to catch my breath for just 2 seconds. Okay, what's up, Arizona? I am so honored and inspired to be here. Everyone, also please give it up for April Donovan. Thank you, our interim leader. Thank you for your leadership, for stepping in and stepping up. You are a true fighter for reproductive freedom, and we also, the round of applause for the staff of Planned Parenthood of Arizona. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. You all give us such a huge reason to celebrate, especially in this moment, and you give so much to Planned Parenthood patients. So look, I know. Everything is on the line right here in Arizona. This fall, the state Supreme Court is set to hear arguments about whether prosecutors can enforce a near total abortion ban from 1864. Boo, yes, exactly. Meanwhile, Arizona is feeling all the challenges, right, of a 15-week abortion ban and doing everything possible to ensure patients are getting the essential care that they depend on. I want to tell you what I've been seeing across the country. I want to tell you what it's looked like for Planned Parenthood patients and others, and what Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona is fighting against since the Supreme Court took away our constitutional right to abortion. Last week, I heard a story from a colleague who was providing abortion care for a patient. This patient was in a state in the South where there was no available access to abortion. You know, she had an infant at home, not to Dr. Gibson's point, not that any of her reasons mattered, but she had made a decision with her family about what she wanted to do. She knew she would have to get out of state to get the care, so she went to a neighboring state. A provider made a call, and she was able to get there. She drove through the night. The night before her procedure, she was told that a 6-week ban had gone into effect, and she'd be unable to receive care. So she called a provider in a different state and drove from her home again, only to be told at that appointment that she was just a few days beyond the state's limit. Panicked, with a navigator, she was able to get to another health center all the way across the country. She had to get on a plane. A patient navigator scheduled her to be seen within the week, informed her there would be no charge for her care, connected her with an abortion fund for travel and lodging assistance. This is just one example of the incredible barriers and the devastating lengths that patients must overcome to access essential health care. This is just one of the examples of the patchwork of care and the infrastructure that Planned Parenthood has built in order to support so many patients and their bodily autonomy. But Planned Parenthood is right there, creating an infrastructure to support patients navigating this patchwork, an infrastructure that allows people to choose hope, even in the most difficult situations. Now, we are movement people, right? We are movement people in this room, so we talk a lot about hope, and we have to have hope because hope fuels movements. Whenever I talk about hope, I always feel like people need something joyous, right? They want to feel better. I get the sense that what they really want is something to take them out of this misery that we are living in. But the truth is, hope is hard. Hope is hard. It requires us to suspend our urge to be practical, to be more daring, to think bigger and bolder and beyond. Hope takes work. It takes sacrifice. It takes discomfort. Sometimes it requires personal risk, right? Personal risk, because we also know that hope isn't charity. Holding on to hope is actually an act of resistance. And if you don't know what I mean, think about where you were last May 3rd when you heard about the Supreme Court leak. How did you feel in that moment? Remember that emotion. Now remember how you felt from May 3rd to June 24th when the Dobbs decision came down. It was 4 or 6 weeks holding on to just a shred of hope that it couldn't be possible, that they couldn't be so cruel. That's what I'm talking about. Hope that can't just be sustained through sheer goodwill or willpower. What hope needs is an infrastructure that helps people turn hope into reality. Now, the patient I was just talking about was depending on an infrastructure of hope. The patient navigators, the health center managers who were helping her to make the appointment, the call centers, the frontline staff to help her check in, the abortion providers who have chosen to stay and be proudly working in this moment to continue to provide abortion care, the fundraisers who were able to get resources and the donors who were able to give, the organizers who are continuing to fight against the bad policies, and the litigators who keep suing the hell out of all of these crazy lawmakers because they understand that they need hope too. That infrastructure is fueled by a steady consistency of care, compassion, love, affirmation, and support. And beyond, it is animated and grounded by a fundamental belief in freedom. And that's what I mean when I say that Planned Parenthood of Arizona, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, you are an infrastructure of hope. Now, you all have seen the maps. You all are among our most, incredible supporters. So you know what 21 states looks like. Every state in the South except Virginia and New Mexico, to here in Arizona where there are bans or restrictions on accessing abortion. Last year, post-Dobbs, over 100,000 people were forced to either remain pregnant against their will or travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles throughout the South and the Midwest to access that care. That is 100,000 stories of what Dr. Gibson just shared, heartbreak, of resistance, and yes, also of hope. And we have heard so many of these stories, unspeakable stories of patients who have literally been sent home or sent to the parking lot because they've been forced to carry non-viable pregnancies to term, and they needed to wait essentially until sepsis set in until they could get access to basic health care. Stories of everyday patients seeking an abortion simply because it isn't their right time, their careers, their education, their existing families, and having to figure it out because their state houses and their governors and the courts have forsaken them. And with every patient who has a story, there's also a provider on the other side of that. Providers like Dr. Gibson and Dr. Liu spoke so beautifully earlier. Stories of providers not being able to deliver the very health care that they've been trained to provide. Stories of providers being forced to call their lawyers before they treat patients under the threat of losing their licenses or criminal charges. Stories of providers making tough decisions about whether they should continue to practice or answer their mission call in their state because healthcare has now become criminalized, or whether or not they should leave home, right, the communities that they have built their families in, that they love because they can no longer practice. Since Dobbs, we know that many providers are making those difficult choices. In states with abortion bans, we have seen OBGYNs fleeing, labor and delivery units closing, a decline in medical students, and an increase in maternal health deserts. So what's clear is not that these bans actually restrict abortion, right? They don't end abortion. They never have. All they do is add burdens to people seeking them, all the while making pregnancy more dangerous. Make no mistake, this is extremism. This is tyranny, and it falls heaviest on those who struggle the most: Black and brown communities, people in rural areas, Indigenous people, immigrants, and trans and non-binary folk. Let me tell you something. I don't know what the end game is. I can't understand when I hear these hundreds of thousands of stories over and over again. Yes, power and control, that's what we talked about last year. They want power and control, and they seem to have gotten a lot of it. But I found it really interesting. A couple weeks ago, I saw an article, interview with Kristen Hawkins, who's the president of Students for Life. She said, their goal is to make abortion unthinkable and unattainable. Think about that. Okay, unattainable. We know how they've tried to do this, right? They have been working towards this for the last 50 years. 50 years spent undermining our democratic institutions through gerrymandering and taking over state houses. 50 years of taking over our state and federal courts. 50 years of locking in a structural and political advantage so that they can operate against the will of the people. They have literally been willing to sacrifice democracy itself in order to gain more power and control and to consolidate it into a tyranny of the minority. And if these bans in 21 states weren't enough, they are going further. They're trying to, if we drive on a street in order to seek access to abortion in Texas, they're trying to criminalize it. If we take medication abortion and it comes through the mail, also in Texas, they're trying to criminalize it. If we give accurate medical information to our students, our families, and friends, that will be criminalized. And we also know it's not just abortion that they are trying to make unattainable. It's gender-affirming care. It's access to birth control, emergency contraception. It's access to voting. It's access to accurate history being taught in our schools. They will stop at nothing, literally, nothing, to take away our fundamental ability to lead and live our free lives. So the lesson I draw from here, right, is that for 50 years, they have been playing a very long game. Yes. And that is because they have had a very long view. So let's go back to Miss Kristen. Kristen said she wants abortion to be unthinkable, right, and also unattainable. Unthinkable. That should also tell us something, right? That they think we should not be able to think for ourselves, that we don't know what's in the best interest of our lives, of our families, of our careers, of our educations. It's not that they think we can't think for ourselves, right? It's that they actually don't trust us to think for ourselves because, well, that would just undermine the patriarchy, right? They don't want us to think for ourselves because at the core, right, it would mean we were actually equal. So now they're saying the quiet parts out loud. If you think I'm being hyperbolic, if you think I'm just screaming from the rooftops out of fear, consider this recent poll. 49% of the public thinks that there are many irresponsible women who will decide to have an abortion up until the moment of birth. 49%, y'all. That's half of the American public believes that there are many irresponsible women who will decide to have an abortion up until the moment of birth. Irresponsible, right? What they're saying is that they believe us to be untrustworthy, that we are bad decision makers, that we are undeserving of the very freedom that we desire to make our own choices. They're treating us as if we don't understand the seriousness, the decisions that we need to make around pregnancy, that we can make these decisions and change them like we just changed our lipstick. Let me tell you something. It is condescending, it is infuriating, and it is belittling it, and we will not stand for that. They wonder why they keep losing at the polls. They wonder, right? They actually think, and when you listen to the conversations, those of you just have it on in the background every day, and they're like, well, is abortion really going to drive turnout again? I mean, because look at that inflation number, right? Is abortion really going to drive out again? Because, wow, look at what's happening over here. Like, we can be just distracted, right? Like, we can't hold two thoughts at the same time. Right? Oh, yeah, that's all right. I forgot. Because they don't trust us to actually make decisions, right? Because we actually could slip up and forget that they have kicked us out of the Constitution. Come on, right? that we could forget that somehow my 83-year-old mother had more rights growing up in the Jim Crow era than my 11 and 14-year-old daughters do right now. We are not going to forget that. So look, they want to make abortion unattainable and unthinkable. Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to keep abortion available and unquestionable. I want to live in a world where no one is able to govern our personal and private healthcare decisions, put bans on our bodies, or cruel laws. We'll have to render them meaningless. We will have to live in a world where our bodies are not criminalized. And I know that future is not far away. That future is not far away, and it's not just based on hope or wishful thinking. Since the Dobbs decision, we have seen hope in Planned Parenthood affiliates and people across the country. Every day we are seeing new stories of hope and resistance. Yes, people are still marching and protesting and rallying and making their voices heard like never before. And we have seen poll after poll after poll, which continues to show us that the majority of people want abortion to be legal. And the opposition also clearly sees this, right? It's why anti-abortion politicians are calling abortion bans minimum standards or consensus, right, instead of the actual bans that they are violating our bodies. They're trying to trick us into thinking that their extreme beliefs are reasonable and will force us into a compromise. But we are clear, there are no compromises on our freedom. And if you don't believe the polls, and if you have not seen what has happened on election day after election day after election day, if you don't believe that we are the majority, then you better look at Beyonce. You better look at Taylor. You better look at Barbie. Because if y'all had any luck to get in one of those rooms this summer, you would have felt the energy, the fire. You would have borne witness to the collective of the largest collective of a multi-generational, multiracial, bipartisan freedom fighters. I mean, full of fierce body positivity, young, old, gender-expansive folks who were ready to dismantle white supremacy and patriarchy while wearing pink platforms, doing it in silver sequins, sequin cowboy hats and thongs. They are able to do it all. Let me tell you something. These are the same folks, the future leaders of the womanist and gender justice majority who power elections up and down the ballots, and we better not forget it. Look, I'm 50. Actually, I'm 51. I was 50 last year. But I was saying I was old as Roe, right? I'm older than Roe, actually, now. So some of us in Gen X, I just said it by way of reference, right? I'm a proud member of Generation X. Some of us may have talked about the millennials and Gen Zs when they started to come into their own. There may have been, op-eds written about it and blogs and all sorts of things. But let me tell you one thing. I had a conversation with a Gen Zer on my team, and we were talking about all things, including losing rights, and all things sexual and reproductive health care. And she said to me, "You know that menopause?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm not doing that." So if they are ready to take on menopause, you better be sure. They are ready to take on and stand up for their rights. They said, don't fear the future, we are the future, and they know that the math is on our side, right? Because every time that abortion has been on the ballot, this coalition, this intersection, this community that has been fighting for freedom has won. That has been true in Ohio. That has been true in Kansas. That has been true in Kentucky and Montana. And I have no doubt that it's going to be true here in Arizona next year when the people will vote on a ballot initiative to enshrine abortion in the state constitution. I'm so excited for what is possible here in Arizona. Yes, right? I'm speaking it into existence, right? Because if we don't define our new reality, we're going to let them continue to define it for us, and we're not having that. Arizona can't build this infrastructure of hope alone. We all have a bigger job to do. That's why I get on planes and come across the country and have conversations with all of you all. Because our job is not just to save access to abortion across this country. We have to save democracy itself. We have to have that same long view. Whether we're talking about building the next 50-year strategy, at minimum, we have to be talking about what it's going to take to get us from 24 to 2040. Okay? 24, critical year. Planned Parenthood advocacy and political organizations are going to put all of their energy into this next election. We are going to do everything we can to re-elect the Biden-Harris administration and secure a pro-abortion majority in the House, elect enough pro-abortion senators to reform the filibuster, and then in 25, we'll be in a position to pass critical legislation, okay? And I want to be clear, as you all are clear, the path to freedom runs through Arizona. Yes. From 25 to 2040, we are going to continue to fight. We know we're going to have to state fights, ballot initiatives. We're going to have to continue to push culture in the next generation and prepare for the next question that is going to come before the next Supreme Court, because this one is not working for us. It needs to be reformed. And here at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, we are going to support you to choose hope every day. Every day, people are waking up in Arizona and across the country, and they are making a decision to no longer be pregnant. They are calling those people in Planned Parenthood health centers in Arizona, and you are there to respond. They are there to help them get the care they need, and every call they answer is a hope trying to be realized. Every day, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona fights for those people. They create the political conditions for them to access essential health care. So with every phone call that they make, every rally, every canvas shift, every door knock, every ballot signature, every ad buy, they too are building an infrastructure of hope. Thanks to Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, there is an infrastructure that empowers people across this country, across the streets in Arizona, to make their voices heard. And it is the reason that this movement elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Senator Mark Kelly, Attorney General Chris Mays, and a host of fierce defenders of abortion access to legislation. Your support today is fortifying that infrastructure of hope. Your support is fueling this incredible movement to take back our rights. So let me tell you something. If you came here hopeless today, if you came here on the dark side of hope, feeling discouraged, I want you to remember, I want to remind you of the patients who are getting in their cars and driving for miles, not knowing what's on the other side of their journey, not knowing how long it's going to take, not knowing if they're going to be stopped or what could happen to them along the way, but that they are so grateful when they get there. I want you to think about the providers who hear from their patients after they are able to get the services that they need, that say, "Thank you, doctor. Thank God for Planned Parenthood." It's a reminder that what gets you in a car and keeps you driving for hours is hope. There are people out there who can't afford to not have hope. If you came in here hopeless, feeling a sense of hopelessness, I want to remind you that hopelessness is a luxury. A big reason we can have hope right now is because all of you. We have so much expertise on our side, and we know what our job is. Our job is to make sure that anybody who needs access to an abortion gets one. Our job is to tell the stories, to put real capital on the line, to take risks, and to help people resist. Our job is to protect our providers and patients, to stop those right to travel laws and the right to accessing free information. Our job is to fight for what had long been a constitutional right. It's to ensure that our other rights are not trampled along the way. Our job is to push the limits, right? To stop funding people who don't care about our rights. Our job is to vote them out. Our job is to pass these lessons on to the next generation. To the next generation, because everyone needs to understand, as my generation learned all too harshly, that movements are never settled. Movements are never settled. They have to be litigated and relitigated and made relevant and re-relevant for every single generation. And that is the work that we are going to continue to do at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, and I am incredibly proud to do it with you all. Thank you so much.